How can the administration do a better job of walking this line of supporting Israel, but at the same time making sure they are speaking out to protect innocent civilians?
Yeah, thank you, Annmarie and Joe, for having me on again. I mean, ultimately, the administration needs to put an end to this bombardment, which is causing the deaths as soon as possible. And the Israelis need to find a way to find those Hamas fighters, maybe not immediately, maybe over time, frankly, and of course, punish them. But in the meantime, I don't think this is a lasting solution. And every day that goes by with the loss of more innocent lives is a bad day for the world. And so the administration needs to work with the international community and obviously with Israel to bring this massive bombardment, this part of the conflict to an end.
Well, the other side of this is humanitarian aid, of course. And I couldn't help but to hear recent remarks from Cindy McCain, who I know you're close to. She's now head of the World Food Program and calls the current situation catastrophic. She's been calling on leaders in Israel as well as Egypt and other neighbors to, as she put it, let us get our food in. She's pointing as well to the shortage of fuel, which makes it impossible to keep bakeries open, which makes it impossible to desalinate water. The case that she makes is compelling. How important is it for any lasting peace or for the administration to have a straight face in supporting Israel, to get this aid where it belongs?
Right, Joe. I mean, these are basic human rights, the right to food, the right to be fed by the international community. And Cindy McCain is absolutely right, Ambassador McCain, when she talks about the need for fuel to get the ovens going. You know, the reality is that Gaza is one of the poorest places in the world. Already people had been in a lot of food insecurity and a lot of poverty. And so this is only making things worse. And of course, Egypt is afraid of having a refugee flow. So the aid needs to be brought into those people where they are. The bombing needs to stop. And the international community, and now I'm talking not just about the United States, but the Gulf states, our European partners, and of course, Israel, we need to all step up and come up with at least a temporary solution that allows for the security of the people in Gaza. Humanitarian needs to be met, as well as the security of the people of Israel. And after that, I think that much more economic assistance and a political solution needs to be found to Gaza and the West Bank. We need to move back to the two-state solution.
As you talk about more international coordination, we had today the Jordanians recalling their ambassador to Israel and telling the Israelis that we don't want your ambassador here anymore. How much more difficult is that kind of coordination when you see this diplomacy fraying?
Well, I think that gets to the heart of the tactics that Israel is using right now. These bombings, even if there's a commander under a hospital or a large apartment building, it's very hard for anyone, frankly, to find that cost acceptable. There has to be another way to take out these Hamas fighters for them to either suffer, death or, other retribution, judicial retribution. The Israelis know how to do this, and you can, frankly, hunt them down over time. Special operations forces are probably in there, and they can continue their work. But the bombing, I think, has to stop, because it is very hard for us then to turn around to the Jordanians, who are key in any kind of diplomatic settlement, to say, help us, please.
Evelyn, I want to ask you about potential threats here at home. We heard from the FBI director who was testifying yesterday, Chris Wray, and his message on Capitol Hill, a bit of a warning to those of us here in the U.S. Let's listen to what he said and have you respond. Here he is.
The reality is that the terrorism threat has been elevated throughout 2023, but the ongoing war in the Middle East has raised the threat of an attack against Americans in the United States to a whole nother level.
Evelyn, how worried should we be about this? How worried are you?
I am worried. I'm worried because, first of all, the level of hate has increased, and we saw the killing of a young Muslim boy in, I believe it was Michigan. We've seen all of the anti-Semitic acts and attacks, the rhetoric that's increased, the people pulling down posters of the missing hostages, the Jewish hostages who were taken into Gaza. The level and the tone of the hate has increased. So domestic terrorism is an increased possibility, unfortunately, or domestic hate targeting people. At the same time, we have the possibility that the international terrorists may take retribution against the United States because, of course, we are backing our ally Israel, and Israel is causing a loss of Muslim lives. So there's a great deal of danger here for the United States, and this is why we really need to turn as fast as possible to a diplomatic solution. We need to offer the Palestinian people some kind of hope that they can have economic prosperity and their own state in the foreseeable future. And we need to make sure that the wealthy Gulf states, those states that have also neglected, frankly, the Palestinian people and this situation here, that they join us and Israel in finding a solution.
Well, on top of all of this, there's another conflict that's ongoing, even though it's almost been evaporated from the top headlines of newspapers. And that's, of course, Ukraine, as Congress debates whether or not they will continue to fund Ukraine. Do you think the administration is selling Ukraine well enough in terms of why the United States should continue to send aid to Kyiv?
Well, look, I don't know that you can blame it on the administration. For some reason, some people in the Democratic Party, a fringe, frankly, it's not the majority. The majority of the votes are for providing assistance to Ukraine. Why? Because if Vladimir Putin takes Ukraine, if he manages to win the war there, he will not stop at Ukraine. He will take over other countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union. You will see him emboldened to help countries like Iran. I mean, they're already allied together in the fight in Ukraine. And then in Gaza, you've seen the Russian government basically meeting with the Hamas leader. So these countries, these very dangerous countries, are working together. If Russia prevails, if Ukraine is militarily defeated, Vladimir Putin will not stop. He will only strengthen Iran, and the world will become much more dangerous for the United States. And frankly, it will be a threat to NATO, which means that we may end up getting involved in a war, which is what we're trying to avoid by providing this assistance to Ukraine so they beat Russia in Ukraine.